Добрый день, глубоко уважаемые дамы и господа.
Good morning, deeply respected ladies and gentlemen. The participants in our extremely important forum entitled Armenia, Its Place in the European Union or in the Eurasian Economic Union. We all know that on the 7th of June, an election is expected in Armenia, an election that will have a huge importance, not only for Armenia, for those dwelling in Armenia, but for the Armenians living all over the world. And today, we are not only keeping an eye on what's happening in Armenia, but also we're trying to do whatever possible to help avoid the fatal consequences, to avoid the negative external influence, in order to help our compatriots who are going to join the elections on the 7th of June, to help them make them the decision that they will believe will be right. After this symposium, we are going to prepare a very important address that will send to all the organizations that will believe it will be important to send to help Armenia, or as a minimum, not to stand in the way of the Armenians as they make this fate-bearing decision. Our symposium will be participated by not only our partners who've got together in this wonderful conference room in the Carlton Hotel, Bratislava, but also online via Zoom from many countries of the world. The minimum number will be represented by Armenians. 80 to 90% of the opinions will be voiced by important public figures from other countries, from Italy, Germany, France, and so on. And now, I would like an order to be given to us so that the symposium could be co-opened together with me by a person who is doing a lot for Armenia and the Armenians, Mr. Konstantin Fyodorovich Zatulin, Russian political figure, member of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, first deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on CIS Affairs. Konstantin Fyodorovich, are you with us? Lubitsa, have you checked? We can't hear him. Konstantin Fyodorovich? Lubitsa, please check. Please check if he's here. If there's a technical problem, then, well, just give me a second. I'll try to check myself. In 10 minutes, okay. Thank you, agreed. Because Konstantin Fyodorovich is going to be with us in 10 minutes, I will ask Mr. Mikhail Belosov. I see that he's already here. Can I ask you, Mr. Belosov, can you hear me? Deputy Director for Strategic Development, former, he is representing NIRC, the Research Institute for the Development of Communications. They are our main partner, the main partner of the Vienna Club in Russia. So Mr. Belosov used to be a senior official of the presidential administration of Russia. He is a former senator of the Russian Federation of Russia. Thank you. Over to you. Thank you for the introduction. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on the opening of the Vienna Club conference today. We're discussing a very important question on the eve of the election in Armenia that has an existential character. Today, while we're facing this election, I would like to mention several considerations that we believe to be important, but perhaps they didn't play out as we expected. I'm referring to the common history between Russia and Armenia, cultural reciprocity, the participation in the same international organization, long-term contracts and agreements, a multi-million Armenian diaspora in Russia, and the position and the privileged position of the Armenian Apostolic Church, and a whole host of other arguments that were expected to play for the further improvement and strengthening of connections and ties between the countries. Unfortunately, the political measures of the oppositions were not efficient enough. They were not able to present the right agenda. Russian public organization kept silent, and serious representatives of the Armenian business in Russia also took a dubious position. On the other hand, the leadership of Armenia was taking very strong measures to pursue their policy, including administrative measures and criminal investigations. Just one example. When directed steps were made to minimize the participation of Armenians living in Russia in these elections. Here's a document prepared by the Armenian authorities. So it is designated for the participation in the election to arrive in the Armenian territory beforehand. That's by the 25th of May, that's yesterday. Get the registration, get an Armenian electronic signature, send the documents to pass through the personality identification procedure. So they are supposed to be invited for this identification procedure, carrying a passport and other documents. So basically a very stringent set of political measures were taken to restrict people from participation. And perhaps what I should mention the unprecedented pressure on the People's Party and the Armenian Church. Try the attempts to oust the Catholicos and the entire leadership of the Armenian Church. And here I have to mention that according to our estimates, there's no secret what next steps the Armenian leadership is going to take. Unfortunately, they're not going to serve the strengthening of the Russian-Armenian relations. So it makes it incumbent for us to focus at this conference and after the election to take steps to help strengthen strategic partnership between Armenia and Russia, to maintain the continuity in the development of the Republic of Armenia. This is quite a difficult task that requires consolidation of international forces and a specific voice of the people should be heard. I wish every success to our conference, our international conference, and I wish us all the understanding and support from the people of Armenia. Thank you. I would like once again to thank our important partner that Mr. Belousov introduced, our research institution for the development of communications, because we've already organized two very important symposium under the title of Bratislava, the capital of peace, the city of peace. And this symposium also carries this title, but it also has this subtitle, which I already mentioned, Armenia, its place in the Eurasian Union or in the European Union.
Уважаемые участники, Ашот Вагеевич, благодарю вас за приглашение, за возможность участия на международной конференции Венского клуба PANAP. С учетом формата мероприятия, моего участия и ограниченного времени, я буду очень краток, без политико-дипломатических формулировок, вот чисто четкое понимание ситуации. Перед армянским обществом еще совершенно недавно такого вопроса, а именно вопрос выбора между Европейским союзом и Евразийским экономическим союзом, не стоял. Этого вопроса не было вообще. Изначально армянское общество существовало в определенных рамках понимания, скажем так, той системы цивилизационных ценностей, исторически обусловленных обстоятельств, направленности Армении, с учетом вопросов безопасности, с учетом специфической сложной ситуации, географической, геополитической, в которой Армения находилась, с учетом наличия или, вернее, отсутствия определенных ресурсов. И сложившаяся ситуация, по всеобщему пониманию, требовала решения ряда вопросов, к которым надо было подходить эпизодически. Я имею в виду в глобальном смысле эпизодически. Как такового выбора между путями в Евразийский экономический союз или Европейский союз не стояло. Ведь, по сути, перед армянским обществом такой вопрос и сейчас не стоит. Армения же не находится на перекрестке между путями в ЕАЭС или ЕС. Армения находится в рамках, в составе Евразийского экономического союза. Соответственно, вопрос надо ставить следующим образом. Выбор армянского общества, якобы общества, формулируется сегодня следующим образом. Выходить из Евразийского экономического союза и пытаться стремиться в Европейский союз или не выходить и не пытаться стремиться. Просто продолжать взаимодействовать с европейскими странами, другими странами, так, как взаимодействовали до сегодняшнего дня, совершенствуя эти взаимодействия, делая их более выгодными, привлекательными и выгодными для Армении, но продолжать укреплять свои позиции в Евразийском союзе, из чего вытекает колоссальная экономическая прибыль, энергетическая безопасность, стабильность, а также, и об этом нельзя не говорить, та система безопасности, в которой находится Республика Армения, по крайней мере, находилась до того, как якобы предыдущее, на мой взгляд, руководство Армении решило инициировать авантюрную аферу в плане смены конституционной системы, системы управления, организовала фейковую так называемую революцию, а потом произошел дележ власти, не смена, а дележ власти, таково мое убеждение, с очень конкретной целью плавно скинуть с себя вопрос Нагорно-Карабахского конфликта, чтобы минимизировать в этом отношении зависимость, в частности и в первую очередь от Российской Федерации. Под этим заложен передел региона, под этим заложено вытеснение российского присутствия и в первую очередь военного присутствия из региона, то есть из Армении. И какой бы ни была цена этому переделу, инициаторы этого процесса, пользователи, бенефициары готовы на любые жертвы. Обычно, по горькому опыту, как мы видим, этими жертвами становятся жизни обычных людей, граждан той или иной страны, попавшие в эти авантюрные сети. Граждан, которые особо даже и не углубляются в проблему, которая им преподносится, которые сильно не разбираются, да особо и не хотят разбираться в тех вопросах, которые перед ними ставятся, в тех решениях, которые им назидают, заставляют, внедряют в их сознание, подсознание, манипулируют, исключительно манипулируют, формируют якобы это общественное мнение и заставляют людей идти тем или иным путем. Потом они же за это и расплачиваются. Расплачиваются собственными жизнями, собственной безопасностью, расплачиваются своими территориями, развалом страны, трагедией национального масштаба. Обычно так заканчивается. Мы это видим сейчас, мы это видели раньше. Мы все это переживаем на протяжении новейшей истории. Конфетка, которая преподнесена армянскому обществу в красивой обертке, внутри на самом деле содержит очень опасный, вредоносный продукт, вернее яд, употребив который армяне в очень краткосрочной перспективе окажутся в тяжелейшей ситуации, в безвыходной ситуации, в катастрофической ситуации. Общество не субъектно. На мой взгляд, любое общество не субъектно. И тем более оно подвержено манипуляциям, современным методам манипулирования и влияния на общественное сознание. Поэтому моя уверенность заключается в том, что данная повестка сформирована не в армянском обществе, не в сознании людей, а в кабинетах тех мозговых центров, которые поставили перед собой задачу создать очередной очаг напряжения. Дальше, к сожалению, из этого выйдет конфликт, горячая точка, фронт, в который будет втянута по их расчетам Российская Федерация. Каков может быть масштаб трагедии для Республики Армения, для моего народа, это уже можно предположить. Подверженное манипулятивному воздействию общества вполне может себе позволить проявлять позицию, которая не рассчитана, не обоснована, основана исключительно на эмоциональных и подсознательных каких-то пониманиях ситуации. Это понятно, так бывает везде. И по сути, с чего возник вообще этот вопрос выбора? Он же возник не потому, что находиться в Евразийском экономическом союзе Армении невыгодно. Ведь никто в Армении, никто не считает и не может считать, что нахождение Армении в Евразийском экономическом союзе неправильно и невыгодно. Никто, потому что этим пользуются все. Это колоссальные доходы в государственный бюджет, который опустошает проворовавшаяся власть. Это очевидное улучшение качества жизни населения с учетом отсутствия реальных секторов экономики. Фактически находиться в ЕС или выходить из него, этого вопроса вообще не существует. А существует другой вопрос, параллельный, который сводится к этому. Продолжать ли дружить, общаться, взаимодействовать с Российской Федерацией или нет? Почему? Потому что обществу в мозги людей, в сознание общества вдолбили, что с Россией взаимодействовать неправильно, невыгодно, они нас обманули, они нас подвели, мы на них надеялись, ведь обществу не говорят, что сложнейшее взаимодействие руководств государств предполагает обсуждение и решение вопросов со взаимным учетом интересов. С того момента, когда армянское государство, когда власть республики, предыдущая, а потом и следующая, действующая, перестали учитывать интересы Российской Федерации в контексте развития событий в регионе, с того момента и начались проблемы. С того момента и начались недопонимания, острые углы, постепенно приведшие к существующей нынешней ситуации. Об этом обществу не говорится. Эти вопросы не раскрываются. Только лишь на очень поверхностном эмоциональном уровне говорится о том, что вот у нас была проблема, а Россия нам не помогла. Что на самом деле произошло? Кто и как провернул эту грязную операцию? Где зарыта собака? Где, вернее, хранятся награбленные миллиарды долларов, в силу которых и по причине которых представители бывшего руководства, а также действующая власть погрязли в этой грязной, в этой страшной авантюре по переделу региона. Похожие обсуждения, похожие форматы, изучение проблемы с объективной позиции могло бы содействовать правильному пониманию ситуации. Я имею в виду помочь армянскому обществу правильно понять происходящее с ним, правильно сориентироваться, не позволить манипуляторам довести страну в очередной раз до краха. Я бы хотел, чтобы вопрос рассматривался именно с этой позиции. Вот не так, как сегодня обсуждают на разнообразных телеканалах, в разнообразных форматах, на конференциях, в обсуждениях, в дискурс происходит следующим образом. Куда идет Армения? Правильно оно или неправильно? И что с этим делать? Нет, вопрос должен быть поставлен, по моему мнению, несколько иначе. Армянское общество, армянский народ ввели в заблуждение, в очень страшное, опасное и нездоровое заблуждение. И в первую очередь друзьям нужно помочь сейчас армянскому обществу, армянскому народу не ошибиться, правильно сориентироваться, предотвратить надвигающуюся трагедию. В первую очередь это касается братского русского народа. Россия, на мой взгляд, может в очередной раз помочь братскому армянскому народу правильно сориентироваться, выйти из-под манипулятивного воздействия и предотвратить надвигающуюся страшную большую трагедию. Благодарю.
I now have the honor, while Mr. Zatulin is on his way, to give the floor to a very important friend of the Armenian people, the person who visited Karabakh twice with me. And after our second trip, Aliyev, using Interpol, initiated a criminal investigation on him. And he, for a certain time, was fearing to visit Slovakia. It's deeply respected Mr. František Mikloško, Slovak political figure, member of the National Council of Slovakia. I would ask him to say a couple of words about what he thinks about the current situation.
Ale dnešný môj príhovor končím v smútku, lebo moji priatelia z Náhorného Karabachu sú stále v Azerbajdžane vo väzení. Ďakujem.
Ну да.
Okay.
Спасибо огромное.
A great, huge thank you to Mr. Mikloshko.
Что в Европе
I must say that in Europe,
приятелей Нагорного
one of the greatest friends of Nagorno-Karabakh, if not the greatest one, is indeed František Mikloško, the person who, with all his heart, is believed to be close friends of Armenia. And when I'm joking to say that, Mr. Mikloško, you're Armenian, he says, no, I'm not Armenian, I'm Karabachian, the Artsakh Armenian. And what he just said is a slap on the face to, including to us, Armenians, who can tolerate that for that long a time, our brothers are staying in the Baku church, some of the best, brightest minds of the Armenian people. And I'm hoping very much that his call to all Armenians and also to the powerful countries of the world who believe themselves to be powerful, because he's representing the European Union. I would like to address the European Union in the first place, to Brussels. Are you not ashamed? You're talking about all these trifles that are happening in Ukraine, for instance. But you're forgetting that Nagorno-Karabakh, right in front of your eyes, has been devastated, and 8 heroes of our people were imprisoned by Baku, and that's the end of it. Everybody keeps silence. Mr. Mikloško keeps asking me about this, and I would like to avow to you honestly, every week he's calling me if there are any news about our friends. Especially he's concerned about Bako Saakyan, whom he believes to be his brother. When I was together with Mr. Mikloško in Nagorno-Karabakh, Bako Saakyan offered us such a big honor. He invited the whole government to his villa and received us. And the next day, they call us and say, please don't go anywhere for lunch. Mr. Saakyan asks you to visit him. He organized some barbecue in Shushi, and he wants to introduce you to the great son of the Russian people, Mr. Konstantin Zatulin. And that was the first occasion for myself and Francis Mikloško to meet Mr. Konstantin Zatulin in Shushi. And that was organized by Bako Saakyan. And because I now see that Mr. Zatulin has appeared on our screen, Konstantin Fedorovich, I would like to ask him to speak. Allow me to introduce him once again. Konstantin Zatulin, Russian political figure, member of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, first deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on CIS Affairs, and a very big friend of the Armenian people and of Armenia. Konstantin Fedorovich, you're welcome. Over to you. Good morning. Can you hear me well? More than well. Very loud and clear. Okay, great pleasure. Firstly, I would like to welcome the organizers and participants in this conference that is being held at a very important time, the moment when in Armenia there are only 10 days left before the election to the National Assembly. And I would risk to state that the election to the National Assembly of Armenia, an important way in each case to learn the opinion of the voters, of the citizens of Armenia. But this time, this election is unprecedentedly fate-bearing. And I'm not exaggerating. There's no doubt you're aware that on the 25th of March last year, the Armenian parliament, where the majority belongs to the advocates of the current Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan. Had it not been for this majority, he wouldn't have been a Prime Minister. They adopted a law about the initiation of joining the European Union. I would like to note this topic, as I understand, is also a topic of our conference. I would like to note that Armenia, over its entire period of independence since 1999, has been maintaining close allied relations with Russia, which led to a situation where the Republic of Armenia, at a certain stage, became a co-founder of the Eurasian Economic Union and the Collective Security Agreement. That's an association created with close participation of Moscow by a number of newly independent states, including Armenia. But if you just reduce it to formalities, I mean, the membership in these unions, I would like to bring your attention to the fact that over hundreds of years, since the Persian and Turkish yoke, the Armenian people were counting on the support from Christian states and Russia in the first place. And Russia did come to help. That happened 20 plus years ago when Eastern Armenia has become part of the Russian Empire. So ever since that moment, whichever was the name of the power that be in Moscow or Armenia, the Russian-Armenian Union was not just a union with the now independent Republic of Armenia, but first and foremost a close union between the Russian and Armenian peoples. And the Armenian people, I will risk to say, was saved from assimilation and extermination because a major part of these people has become part of the state joined with Russia. And these are not mere words. The threat of extermination was looming over Armenia, as testified by the tragic events of the beginning of the 20th century. I mean, the genocide of the Armenian people by the Ottoman Empire. I would like to note that we in Russia in 1995 recognize the genocide of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire and declared 24th of April as a day of memory of the victims of this genocide. So therefore, as a historian, I would like to note that, of course, this genocide on a large scale developed during World War I, but even before that, and we're perfectly aware of that, at the turn of the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, huge reprisals and pressure and murders of Armenians were happening in the Ottoman Empire. Actually, the Ottoman Empire, as it was approaching its demise, they decided to invent an enemy represented by Armenian, and it was monstrously executed under the pretext that Armenian were traitors. Armenians were not any traitors. They were just peasants or even soldiers in the Turkish army, and they were just exterminated. So the first ones to be exterminated were people who were serving in the Turkish army, who were protecting Turkey. They were deemed unreliable, and of course they were exterminated as part of the Ottoman Empire when this Armenian cleansing was deployed all over the Ottoman Empire. I don't want to continue the story, but let me just note that in a certain turn of the domestic history that happened after the October Revolution, Armenia has obtained its quasi-statehood as part of the Soviet Union, as the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic, and Karabakh became part of Azerbaijan. However, the Soviet power was competent enough to set the status of the Nagorno-Karabakh region as an autonomous region, perfectly understanding that the population of Nagorno-Karabakh had to enjoy certain rights, to feel themselves safe within Azerbaijan. I'm recalling this now because now all this has been cast doubts on by the current Armenian leadership. The current leadership of Armenian and Mr. Pashinyan himself leave no doubts that they despise the so-called heroic past related to the fight of the Armenian people over centuries for their independence, for their statehood. How can you assess differently the fact that Mr. Pashinyan believes that the Armenian Apostolic Church, the oldest Christian church in the world, is a foreign agent in Armenia, or has been since the Byzantine times, which Armenia was joining or leaving from time to time. And we perfectly know that huge reprisals have been deployed against the Armenian Church by the party that Mr. Pashinyan is bringing to the election. They have a program statement saying that should they win, the Civic Agreement Party, their deputies, and Nikol Pashinyan themselves will make new efforts in order to make this Christian church obey their secular power. And unfortunately, to my great regret, neither the Pope of Rome or the Moscow Patriarch haven't found the time up until now to respond to this unthinkable intervention of the secular power in the questions of faith and church. But this is a question that is, of course, domestic for Armenia. I believe that the church is a system building a structure within Armenia, because even when there was no Armenian statehood, it was the church that was maintaining the national identity, allowing the Armenian people to stay, to keep the history, because we know from the history that there used to be peoples who have lost their existence, Khazarians, ancient Egyptians, and so on and so forth. And if you take the ancient Persia and other Middle Eastern countries, there are a lot of peoples like that. The Armenians have been able to keep their place in history, and it was all because the church was bringing them together and adding them strength. Today, it's all negated by the current leadership of the Republic of Armenia. Against this background, one might think that problems of relations between Republic of Armenia and Russian Federations are kind of petty and small. The problems of positioning regarding those unions where Armenia is already a member of and where they want to join. I perfectly understand that you are holding your conference in Bratislava. Slovakia is a member of the European Union. I am perfectly aware that it has no plans to leave it or even not in NATO. But the question is actually in the following. The question is, this kind of solutions put under risk Armenia as a country and the Armenian people. Today, from the economic point of view, Armenia is earning on the Eurasian market because of its ties with Moscow. The progress that the Armenian economy has shown has been connected with Russia. With the sanctions imposed of it, had to find bypass ways for investment. And our trade turnover is happening via Armenia and some other countries. As a result of the recent visit of the summit of the European Union held in Armenia, this question was also put to doubt. They want Armenia to join the sanctions against Russia. For us in Russia, it was a shock that Armenia was receiving Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who right on there, on the eve of the victory parade in Moscow, which, by the way, was visited by Slovenia's Prime Minister, Mr. Fico, laying the wreath on the grave of the unknown soldier. And so he used that venue, Zelensky used that venue to say that they are prepared to attack Russia. That happened in Yerevan. And our ally, the Republic of Armenia, was receiving, was saying goodbye to, was listening to Mr. Zelensky without any comments on that. So what's the quality of allied relationship in this respect? It's clear that it's approaching zero. What about economics? I've already said that today, 35% of electrical power consumed by Armenia is generated on the power plant reconstructed by Russia. We, at our own expense, restored the activity of the Misamor power plant. And before that, I visited Armenia in 93, 94. Armenia was cast into darkness. And people were using wood to keep warm. They had these little stoves on every balcony, which they fed with logwood. And then, because this decision was made to close down the Armenian nuclear power plant, and we helped to bring it back into operation. And now Mr. Pashinyan is purporting to sign the agreement with Europe to shut down the nuclear power plant again. Today, Germany, that has destroyed its nuclear power plants, is coming back to coal-based generation. Today, it has become an established truth that all these steps made earlier were wrong in Europe, and now the government of Armenia, in the interest of its allied relationship with the West, is taking this decision. It turns out that Armenia is going to be buying a modular nuclear power plant from the US, and the US doesn't have them available. That's a result of a visit of Vice President of the US, Mr. Vance, and the agreement signed to the effect that Armenia should spend $1 billion to buy these small nuclear power plants, modular power plants, that the US don't have at the moment. They just don't exist. So this adventurous course is actually related to the desire of Mr. Pashinyan to get rid of the political opposition, to get rid of the Armenian Apostolic Church that is being announced the foreign agent of Moscow, and all this in the interest of fighting with Russia is supported by the leadership of the European Union. The European Union is today bearing heavy responsibility for all the failed attempts to settle the Ukrainian conflict. We all know that the US is stating their separate position, but if you listen to some leaders of the EU countries, such as France and Germany, or the UK, that's not part of the EU, they maintain that the war should be continued at the expense of new lives of Ukrainians and Russians. And Armenia, they're trying to get Armenia involved, but Armenia has always been in a very vulnerable political position. Today, the Middle East has been exploded through the actions of the United States. Not a few years have passed since Armenia has shamefully lost its position in Nagorno-Karabakh, and they went away from the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, where they had lived for centuries. And today, Republic of Azerbaijan is not hiding the fact that they are not only destroying the history, but also destroying the churches staying on the Karabakh territory. And the government of Armenia is not kind of noticing it because they have gone too far away. The Trump corridor, Zangezur corridor. Today, Prime Minister Pashinyan is scaring the electors that if they don't vote for them, there will be war. I would like to assure you, whoever is in power in Armenia, Russia is connected with Armenia in an allied way. Yes, Armenia has suspended its membership in the Defense Association with other CS countries, even though there's no such point in the charter of the Joint Defense Organization. That was an invention of Mr. Pashinyan. Tomorrow, the summit of Eurasian Economic Union will be held in Astana, Kazakhstan, where the membership of Armenia in the Eurasian Union will be discussed, with Mr. Pashinyan not having found the time to join them. And I don't exclude that very serious decisions will be made, actually suspending the membership of Armenia in the Eurasian Economic Union. That is a very big threat for the well-being of the Armenian citizens. But we can't make believe that we have a union with Armenia, which is actually involved in the activities against Russia in the Caucasus and in a broader international aspect. We perfectly know that Mr. Pashinyan and his allies, since the very start of the Russian conflict with Ukraine, have taken floor in Europe, saying that we are not allies with Russia, and we don't wish any victory to Russia. So they're on the side of our enemies. How should we respond in this situation? That's a very serious story. Can the European Union take, for instance, responsibility for the security of Armenia, to guarantee that Armenia is not going to come under threats and pressure? That's being maintained all the time from Azerbaijan and Turkey, because Azerbaijan is demanding that changes in the constitution of Armenia should be made, believing that without which no single agreement can hold. So please tell me, who of the European countries can guarantee the security of Armenia? They actually maintain they're actually much more interested in Azerbaijan because of its energy prowess, energy potential, its oil exports. That is what's happening today. And that puts under threat the relations between the Russian and Armenian people. We have not less of Armenians living in Russia. 600,000 Armenians live in Russia. And by the way, they are not afforded the right to vote. And they are creating a lot of difficulties for them. Armenia, according to its law, as opposed to Moldova, for instance, that opened 200 polling stations in Western Europe. Armenia has not opened a single polling station anywhere. The voting is only to be done on the territory of Armenia. And we're seriously concerned that the voices of Armenians who live in Russia will be abused. Mr. Pashinyan is what he's doing is that in a very harsh way, he's putting reprisals on the opposition, manipulating the election. And this is being absolutely ignored by the leaders of the European Union, just out of spite towards Russia. What will it lead to the Armenian people to? It will lead them to become impoverished. And who will take responsibility for the care of Armenia? Or maybe Ursula von der Leyen or Kaja Kallas will do that. What do they have available in this region to protect Armenia from Turkey, from Azerbaijan, in the case if this pressure leads again to an armed conflict? This is actually obvious. So therefore, I believe the question that we're facing now is indeed fate-bearing. If the Armenians want to maintain their nation, if they respect their past, if they respect their faith, I think the answer at this election is quite obvious. I don't fear any claims that I intervene in domestic affairs. The West has done it so much. Anywhere, in Hungary, in Romania, the candidates are taken out of polling because the leadership of the European Union doesn't like them, like it's been done in Moldova. And manipulations with the closing down of the pipeline through Ukraine is used to influence the election in hybrid. So any complaints that we are now offering some hybrid impact on Armenia don't hold any criticism. This is what I wanted to mention today in this presentation. Thank you.
Спасибо вам, господин Затулин. Так детально и досконально.
Thank you, Mr. Zatulin. You have represented the situation in Armenia in a most detailed way, so we are highly unlikely to add anything. But as far as the bullet points of your presentation are concerned, I would just like to add a few words. That third assembly in Yerevan on May 4th and 5th, there were most important persons from European Union present. So I would just like to note a few words there that we have received through our own channels. It had very important reasons there. First of all, EU is very likely to lose its stance there. People are fearful with the fact that Brussels shortly will be having big-scale problems, which is going to threaten the future existence of the European Union as such. The reason for that is that the Western Europe has taken the course of annihilating Russia. Since they have done so, in order to improve their position, in order to strengthen their position, they decided to add yet another member of European Union, taking Yerevan, for example, not just geographically, but any important or useful member may be added. England, Turkey, Switzerland, Norway, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, regardless of their geographical position. And there was a very strict task to strengthen that position. They don't say a word about that, but that was obviously the point to hold this assembly in Yerevan first, with Baku following. That's the first addition to your statement. The second thing, you've mentioned small atomic power plants, modular reactors. Actually, yesterday we had the first panel session on Bratislava as the capital of the world, but basically we discussed the future of I'm sorry, we discussed energy independence of Europe and energy independence of Europe. So, Mr. Zatulin, we discussed the question of small atomic power plants. And you're quite right. In Yerevan, they signed a contract to install the units that don't physically exist. I'm going to quote a big-scale expert, or experts rather, who spoke yesterday. Nobody actually had, or still have, the power plants that were mentioned yesterday. So it's China, basically, not America, but they were actually bluffing that they could provide those small modular reactors with millions hiding behind that contract signed. And I don't really know where Armenia could actually get that money from. So that's what I mean by saying a few words about small modular reactors that don't actually exist. Then you said that the culture is eliminated, is being eliminated. There is a term, cultural genocide, so to speak, and in London University, my daughter was preparing a book entitled Cultural Genocide, and it was issued in 2 languages, in Armenian and in English. If you really want to annihilate people through genocide, it will not be sufficient that you oust 150,000 Armenians of Nagorno Karabakh. You just need to annihilate their traces and tracks. She gave a definition of cultural genocide in the book. Professor Raphael Lemkin gave a definition of genocide, but he couldn't really expand this to the cultural genocide. And now we have it, and it's here. A lot of Armenians have been accusing CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization. They accused CSTO when Artsakh was being attacked of being idle. Mr. Khashinian signed a paper in Prague that Karabakh is not a part of Azerbaijan, but maybe CSTO, I was asleep of the tongue. I meant Karabakh is not Armenia. Thank you very much for correcting me. Mr. Prime Minister made a few corrections. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. You spoke about a very important thing.
Что на самом деле сделал Никол Пашинян? До Никола Пашиняна руководители Армении, исходя из тактических соображений, поддерживая, безусловно, армян в Нагорном Карабахе, не признавали Нагорно-Карабахскую республику. То есть она оставалась
Armenians, but Nagorno Karabakh was not legally recognized. Mr. Pashinyan, before the war had actually started, publicly announced Karabakh is Armenia, full stop. But today he said Karabakh throughout the independence has not been a part of Armenia. So he contradicts himself. First of all, he provoked Azerbaijan, and then afterwards he actually stepped aside and ignored his previous statements. we wanted to introduce peacekeeping troops to Karabakh by request of both parties, but no mandate has been provided to agree on their presence there. So when we entered a military conflict in 2022, Azerbaijan used that opportunity and occupied the entire territory of Nagorno-Karabakh the year after, in 2023. And all of the claims for Karabakh cannot actually be relevant here, because CSTO, when Nagorno-Karabakh has not been recognized efficiently, has not taken any commitments, but when in the year 2022, Azerbaijan attacked Karabakh and now has taken 200 square kilometers of the Armenian territory, it was publicly announced, although not in written form, that CSTO should send their mission there. CSTOs did send their mission there, and a working group was summoned there, where Armenian government was proposed to take some actions there. Armenia, in the face of Mr. Pashinyan, dropped those agreements in Yerevan at CSTO session. Instead, European Union monitoring experts have been summoned there, but nothing is actually happening there apart from just monitoring. They just take a look at what is happening. Mr. Pashinyan claims that he has entered a new era of relationship with Turkey and Azerbaijan. Mr. Aliyev and him in the UAE have been awarded with a prize for brotherhood of peoples. So he's trying to play with both hands. On one hand, he would like us to fight with Azerbaijan for Armenia. On the other hand, he claims that he established friendly relationships of Azerbaijan and with Azerbaijan and Turkey. So when Mr. Pashinyan is gone, what is going to happen? So what do they offer to CSTO? Have a war with Azerbaijan, with at the same time strengthening relationship with Armenia? I don't really know. I would like you actually to stay with us for a couple of more minutes, because I would like you to stay with us. At this prestigious symposium, I would like to once again say that we need that Mr. Pashinyan is trying to sell us and our motherland. Ask yourselves this question. In the first meeting with Aliyev, the CS meeting with Aliyev, he said it's going to take $5 billion from somewhere. We don't know where from. Mr. Zatulin mentioned that as well. So I have a right to say that that's a fact. Because those $5 billion were offered to Sarkisyan on behalf of Mr. Aliyev, and Mr. Alexander Lukashenko was offering that. And then, as a part of the international forum in Grinitsa, a representative of Mr. Aliyev, Asimullah Zadeh was his name, speaking in front of two members of the Armenian parliament, said, and I remember I was actually chairing a panel of South Caucasus for 4 years. On one final year, I was officially being offered $5 billion for Karabakh, and I could get that money anywhere I wanted to. So there was a person who had taken $5 billion, and I announced here, Mr. Pashinyan, you have a right to give us all of the international courts. I can give you a right to do so. I announce that you have sold Armenia for money. You have sold it. You have sold it because you never had anything Armenian in you, and you don't have it, because any Armenian person would say what we have announced during the meeting with Mr. Mulazadeh. Would say, Mr. Mulazadeh, you see, here are Azeris and Armenians. Azeris actually think that the motherland can be bought and sold. Never any Armenian would ever have a single thought about that. So that's what Mr. Pashinyan is for you. And again, Mr. Zatulin, another side comment. Aliyev is speaking about Armenia as Western Azerbaijan, changing the names there, meaning that Western Azerbaijan is actually Armenia. Armenia is Western Azerbaijan. That's what they claim that officially in Baku. I would like to once again thank Mr. Zatulin, and now we would like to connect to California. Yunona Akobjanyan is going to be with us. Yunona Akobjanyan is going to speak for us here today. Over to you, please, Yunona.
Здравствуйте всем. Я начну на русском и переведу, наверное,
Hello.
потом перейду на английский.
I would like to start
Большое спасибо за
in Russian, then I will speak in English. It's a real honor that you have provided for me to speak at this forum, and I would like to wish everyone very well. And after you have said, Ashot, you will send all of the letters.
Speaking here with so many famous speakers, and I want to wish good luck to everyone who is speaking today. Окей, хорошо. А слайды вы будете показывать, да? Мне не надо share делать?
Да, будет.
Да? Хорошо. Тогда я не буду уже... So we will start the speech. Armenian Apostolic Church and how we... Started in the 1st century by apostles Bartholomew and Thaddeus, founded in the early 4th century. Вы мне говорите? Подождите. Да,
Вы только скажите, когда надо переключить слайды, и больше ничего. Слайды переключаются отсюда. Пожалуйста, продолжайте.
Ага. Хорошо. У меня на английский. Вот так. Вот так хорошо, да? Уже.
Давайте, уже время идет.
Okay, да. So the church was founded started in the 1st century and founded in the 4th century. And converted Armenia when Grigoriu Savuric converted Armenia to Christianity, and Armenian Apostolic Church became deeply connected to Armenian identity, culture, language, and survival. Armenian churches and monasteries suffered repeated invasions during the Arab, Seljuk Turks, Mongol invasions, later Ottoman and Persian wars. The most devastating assault against Armenian Apostolic Church occurred during the Armenian genocide. Please change the slide. And under Ottoman Empire, many sacred sites were converted into mosques, military buildings, barns, or left in ruins. Clergy arrested or executed. Religious manuscripts and treasures were lost forever. The genocide aimed not only to eliminate Armenians physically, but also to erase their spiritual and cultural heritage. Under Soviet Union, religion across the region also faced repression. Armenian Apostolic Church was heavily restricted by the 80s Soviet government. Churches were closed, clergy monitored, and religious education limited. However, the church remained a symbol of Armenian identity and resilience. Следующий слайд можно. Modern documented examples of cultural destruction occurred in Nakhichevan, where thousands of Armenian medieval monuments and medieval cemetery of Julfa, once containing thousands of intricately carved Armenian khachkars, cross stones, reportedly disappeared during the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Then, можете слайд поменять. After the Nagorno-Karabakh conflicts and videos showing damage to recently restored churches, Armenian communities and international observers voiced concern about preserving them in territories that changed control. Concerns about the preservation of Armenian cultural and religious sites have recently been growing. Можете слайд поменять? Stockholm Center for Freedom. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Stockholm Center for Freedom reports an Armenian church dating to 1603 in the western province of Kütahya that was on the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism Preservation list was demolished in January after it was acquired by a private party. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. In March, an old Armenian cemetery was destroyed during construction in Ankara's Ulus district as part of gentrification project, and human remains were found at the site. An old Armenian cemetery in Turkey's eastern province of Van was destroyed by bulldozers in August, and bones were scattered across the field, sparking outrage among the Armenian community and opposition. An Armenian Protestant church in Diyarbakir was also leased to the Ministry of Culture and Tourism for a period of 10 years and serve as a public library. This is 19th century Armenian church. It was put up for sale on a Turkish real estate website. In the ad, the church, which is located in Bursa province, was described as perfect for touristic attraction because it is in UNESCO protected area. The seller also said the church was a good investment as it could be used as a hotel, museum, or art gallery. Surp Yertutun Holy Trinity Armenian Church in central Turkey's Aksehir district will serve as the world master of humor art house. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Следующий слайд. Можно? Да, спасибо. US-based advocacy group, International Christian Concern, criticized the move, saying Turkey has not made any attempt to return abandoned churches to their original Christian communities. Instead, Turkey either converts these churches into mosques or restores their buildings into faith tourism sites. When pursuing the latter option, Turkey uses it as an example to the international arena about how they care for religious freedom, the group said. However, it is a point which confuses religious freedom with faith tourism. The state reaps the monetary rewards of having churches restored into cultural sites and museums. Any remaining Christian community is forced to petition the state for access to these sites for worship purposes. In recent years, Armenian clergy in Jerusalem, which is on the picture, have reported growing incidents of harassment and attacks by extremist groups. Priests have been spat upon, verbally abused, and physically assaulted, property vandalized. One would think this is all happening outside of Armenia. And in Armenia, Armenian Apostolic Church, part of the tradition and culture for the country is protected, right? Unfortunately, in recent years, tensions have occasionally emerged between church leaders, political activists, and state authorities inside Armenia itself. Some members of the clergy became outspoken during periods of political crisis and national trauma, especially after the 2020 war. At times, critics of the church targeted clergy verbally on social media or during demonstrations. Some incidents have involved vandalism of church property or confrontations around religious institutions. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Shogakat TV was removed from the list of Armenia's public broadcasters and effectively stripped of its operating license in October 2025. The shutdown occurred amid strained relations between the Armenian authorities and the Armenian Apostolic Church, which founded the channel. Critics, including the Union of Journalists of Armenia and various media groups, condemned the move as politically motivated targeting of the church. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Garigin II, the head of the Armenian Apostolic Church, and senior clergy have faced growing criticism, hostility, and even harassment and political pressure in Armenia during periods of national crisis and political division following the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. As Catholicos of all Armenians since 1999, Garigin II has remained one of the country's most influential religious figures, but his leadership has also placed him at the center of public and political tensions. Tensions intensified after Catholicos Garigin II delivered a speech in Switzerland in May 2025 at an international conference titled Religious Freedom, Preserving Armenian Spiritual, Cultural, and Historical Heritage in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, organized by the World Council of Churches and the Protestant Church in Switzerland. Although much of the criticism remained verbal or political, many Armenians viewed the attacks on Garigin II as part of a broader effort to diminish the authority of the Armenian Apostolic Church in public life. For many Armenians, Garigin II represents more than a religious leader. As the Catholicos seated at Mother See of the Holy Echmiadzin, he symbolizes continuity with centuries of Armenian Christian history and national identity. At the same time, Armenia's modern democratic environment has also created space for public debate about the Church's role in politics, transparency, and national affairs. Some Armenians believe religious leaders should remain outside direct political disputes, while others expect the Church to speak openly during times of crisis. The Church, можете следующий слайд поставить. The Church has been accused of violating Article 17 of the Constitution of Armenia, which establishes the principle of separation of church and state, by openly criticizing Prime Minister Pashinyan's government. This criticism have focused on the Catholicos of all Armenians' official calls for Pashinyan's resignation following Armenians' defeat and the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Similarly, the Church has been accused of violating Article 7 in connection with Bishop Bagrat Galstanyan's leadership of the Holy Struggle, a political movement that demanded the resignation of Pashinyan and his administration, which Bishop Bagrat Galstanyan was doing as a citizen of Armenia, not as a bishop, by the way. According to the 1991 Armenian Law on Freedom of Conscience and Religious Organizations, hold on 1 second, I think I lost.
Եթե կարելի է կարճ կարդալ։ Ժամանակը լրանում է կարճ, խնդրում եմ։
Ահա։
Եզրափակիչ։
We can go by the slides. Можете слайд, если поменяете, да? And the plans that Pashinyan's government has for the church, he actually reported in the election campaign. His campaign is planning to remove the de facto head of the Armenian Apostolic Holy Church, and election of the new vicar, adoption of the reformed canons. He's planning to reform canons of the Armenian Apostolic Holy Church and elect new Catholicos of all Armenians in accordance with the established procedures, which are very different from what is been established for the last 2000 years since the beginning of the church. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. And we, as the community of followers of the Armenian Apostolic Church in US, we gathered together and requested our primate for a firm canonical position in the matter. This is what the communities are able to do all over the world. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. And the same was done, by the way, in Armenia when they protected Catholicos, when the government was trying to physically remove Catholicos from the church. And without history, there will be no memory, and without memory, there will be no future. It seems like there is concerted effort of removing any of the traces of Armenian civilization from the world, from all the old churches and public places that we have. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. And we are calling on the international community to release all clergy and laity of the Armenian Apostolic Church who have been imprisoned for their ecclesiastical and civil positions, and to ensure a fair trial of their cases. We also express concern about attempts by state bodies to interfere in the internal governance of the Armenian Apostolic Church and to create structures that contradict the canonical structure of the Church and the constitutional principle of independence from the state, according to Constitution. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. We also ask to discuss the issue of sending an independent mission to access the situation of religious freedom in Armenia, including the conditions of detention of imprisoned clergy. By the way, the Catholicos is also banned from leaving the country. And we also ask to issue a statement supporting the canonical integrity and spiritual sovereignty of the Armenian Apostolic Church as an integral part of the right to religious and national identity of the Armenian people. We ask the international community to help with preserving the identity, which is also cultural identity of the whole world. It's not only Armenian cultural treasures, but of the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Спасибо. Следующее выступающий очень важно, потому что
The next speaker is very important for us.
Is very important because he comes from Armenia. This is Mr. Arman Abovyan,
член политического совета партии
member of the political party.
Национального собрания Республики Армения. Я надеюсь, что мы через
I'm hoping
господина Абовяна сейчас
that
будем иметь
via
самые
Mr.
последние
Abovyan, we're going to get the most recent information
сегодняшний день Армении
that can help us understand the current situation in Armenia today. Against the background of these anti-constitutional activities of the Armenian Prime Minister. Mr. Abovyan, you're welcome. Hello, can you hear me? We can hear you loud and clear. So hello again. Thank you, the organizers of the conference. Thank you, Mr. Grigoryan. Colleagues, I think it's very important that this conference is being held at a European venue in a country, in one of the countries that are positioning themselves as lighthouses of democracy. And I'm not joking, I'm absolutely serious. Why? Because the internal political situation in Armenia is heated to the limit. Why? Because the authorities understand that in no way, even with a minimum adherence to honesty, it can win. For a very simple reason. If you take the recent polls, the ratings, and the policy as such, I mean, of the current authorities, people are not just disappointed, they're full of resolve to stop this Azerbaijani, Turkish, anti-Armenian free-for-all that's happening in the country. But now, a very bad trend is gaining momentum in the country. When the authorities, by trying to push some trends, for instance, one of the latest trends is that of blaming the opposition for espionage, based exclusively on situation-based things, like Nikol Pashinyan declares in a meeting that there are spies among the opposition. He calls a name, Andranik Tivanyan. And after that, a day and a half goes by, and then the National Security Service is trying to think of something. Can you imagine? Announcement is being made on a meeting, and then in a day and a half, security services come into play. So in a day and a half, they arrest number 2 in the list of the Prosperous Armenia Party, which I have the honor to represent. Also, Gagi Katsurika and other opposition leaders come under direct blackmail to nationalize the assets that he has. So he has a cement factory. But the situation has gone to such an extreme. Can you imagine the level of disgrace that, and I'm sorry for these words, but I can't find milder words. So will it help the authorities? Of course not. None of these spy stories, which, by the way, were also brought up with the help of the Turkish fake sites, websites that were quickly found out by local investigators and journalists. Second, I would like to mention the policy of Nikol Pashinyan to convert Armenia into Turkish land. And once again, I'm very happy that this discussion is being waged in a European venue. You know, the European Congress got held in Yerevan a couple of weeks ago, with all the European leaders coming and saying really charismatic speeches. I had my hair come up on its end when I was listening to them. The point is, the current authorities have absolutely no support from the grassroots. Oh yes, of course, there are some people who sympathize it, which I believe is okay. But to maintain at least getting some votes that would allow them to play a considerable role in Armenia's policy, but it's just absent. So the authorities are just heating up the situation. For instance, they are lying, and in addition to that, they are blaming other political forces, claiming that they are lying. For instance, one of Azerbaijani Tatars claimed that one of the conditions for peace should be to allow Azerbaijani Tatars to live on the current Armenian territory. The Armenian authorities are saying that this is true. I mean, they have not tried anything to cede those lands. But the topic is there. It's under control of the government institution of Azerbaijan. Basically, it's part of the government doctrine of Azerbaijan, splitting Armenia and turning it into some amorphous geopolitical territory that will only serve the interests of whoever else except for the Armenians. But of course, in the first place, in the interests of Azerbaijan. And I'm referring to Zangezuri corridor as well. So the purpose is to split Armenia, firstly starting with the south of Armenia. But the authorities are saying that this is not what is happening. So there are no plans to allow outsiders to dwell in Azerbaijan. But Aliyev said that this topic is not just in existence, but it's dominating in the negotiations. Azerbaijan is extremely interested in the re-election of Pashinyan because he believes that it's a historic chance for them to close the Armenian question once and for all. And it's by no means an exaggeration, it's really so. So now they're trying to keep quiet, helping the stooges. But, for instance, on the 18th and 19th of June, just after the election of this current 2026, the part of Armenian land that's now under governance of Azerbaijan, Nakhchivan, will host a Congress. More than that, Ilham Aliyev actually issued an instruction to the current Armenian authorities demanding that exact timelines and locations should be provided to allow to settle those incomers. But he's lying from morning till night, saying that this subject is not being discussed. So you understand, absolutely crazy, hybrid, I would say, attacks on the minds and hearts of electors is going on. So actually, a hybrid war is being waged against the population of Armenia using all possible tools, from rabid lies to prison sentences. I don't exclude that it's going to go along the lines of what happened in Moldova. I don't exclude that there will be attempts to remove contenders from the opposition from elections. But it will not help it will not save the authorities for a very simple reason. The question is not about the opposition to Pashinyan. The question is, now people, rank and file people, who maybe didn't think of positioning themselves as politically active like 6 months ago. So they understand that the question is not about changing the authorities, but the question is really about the existence of the country. An absolutely crazy trend to worsen the relations with the Russians, with Russia. And it's clear people involved in manufacturing, in agriculture, they're all focused on the Russian market. But you know what the authorities came up with? They're saying, no, the Russian, yes, indeed, they are trying to pressure the situation now. Stopping exports from Armenia to Russia, agriculture like flowers, like brandy. But after the election, they will immediately improve the situation and everything will become as usual again. Mr. Abovyan got disconnected. And let me continue. In spite of him going offline, we have absolutely understood the situation that you have presented. We're very well aware of it. And we confirm every word you said. And here, I can only make one conclusion. It's not even important what terrible information we're going to get from Armenia. It isn't important for us anymore. What's important, how we respond to the situation. When we are expecting absolute falsification, or as a minimum desire to falsify the election, how are we going to respond to that? After I give the floor to the deeply respected Mr. Robert Amsterdam now, we expect interventions from the ex-president of Moldavia, Mr. Igor Dodon, who will share with us what was being done in Moldova and what today we, the worldwide Armenianship and our partners, should undertake in Europe, in the world in order not to face this risk, not allow those things to happen in Armenia that happen in other countries. And here, major lawyers will help us. The first one, Mr. Robert Amsterdam. The second, ex-Prime Minister of Slovakia, renowned international legal expert, Mr. Jan Czarnogorsky. So we will together draft a resolution of our symposium that should have a big effect so that Nikol Pashinyan shouldn't take this risk. And if the election is falsified and the entire people will come out into the streets, so they shouldn't say here in Europe, that's already post factum, this is normal. No, there's nothing normal about that. Mr. Abovyan has presented the situation quite clearly. Now, the person whom you know very well, Robert Amsterdam, an international legal expert in political protection and human rights.
To give him the floor, please.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I certainly support the comments made by our colleague concerning the Armenian church and the attacks on the church that are occurring every day, not only in Azerbaijan but in Armenia. And I think we have Christian prisoners in both countries, and there seems to be a common thread between Baku and Yerevan with respect to the destruction of the church. And let everyone in Armenia understand that Pashinyan's platform contains within it the seeds of the church's destruction. Pashinyan will take an election victory as a victory against the church and an endorsement of his personal attacks on the Catholicos. So what we are seeing in Armenia with Mr. Pashinyan is a very, very unique campaign that is based on the destruction of his country's own culture, history, and church. It is almost unique. As I've done many times, I compare it to what Pol Pot did in Cambodia when he reset the clock, when he denounced the entire history of his people. I think Mr. Pashinyan's attacks on the symbols of Armenia, attacks on the very territory of Armenia, harken back to a very dark time. But I want to speak specifically about a false choice that is being foisted on Armenia by both the West and the East. And what I am saying bluntly is this: there is only one issue for the people of Armenia to think about in the voting booth, and that is the Armenian future. This is being lost. We have an election where superpowers are trying to make this about them, whether it's about the United States, the EU, or Russia. They are not the point. The point is the preservation of Armenia in this existential election. And I want to be very clear that, I'm privileged to act for Samuel Karapetyan, an individual who was in fact jailed for his religious beliefs before he ever became involved in politics. And what is critical to understand is that we in Armenia, those people in Armenia today, only have to vote for their church, their language, and their culture. And they need to restore the rights of the Armenian citizens who were basically in Artsakh and have been not only displaced, but have lost their right to vote and have lost some of the key characteristics of citizenship of Armenia. Their persecution within Armenia needs to be addressed. The internal dynamics of the country, the education of the people, the reestablishment of rule of law. The West seems to have lost the point of what a democracy is all about. The greatest threat to democracy in Armenia is Pashinyan. It is not Russia, it is not America, it is him. It is his autocracy. It is his holding of political prisoners. It is his attack on the church. It is his signing of agreements with other countries to hand over land, minerals. He has made a bazaar of surrender. Surrender is not a foreign policy. Surrender and lack of competence is not a position to run on in an election. Physically attacking voters, physically attacking refugees, attacking those displaced, does not provide the optics of a campaign. So believe me, when those results come in, it is incumbent upon all of us to understand that while today there are hostages in Baku and Yerevan, if this election is falsified, the entire populace of Armenia will be held hostage. And we have a leader who has demonstrated again and again and again that he has no concerns with rule breaking, that the only thing he believes in is his own personal power. He does not build institutions. He attempts to build relationships with powers that have a history with this country, with Armenia, that is suspect to doubt as to their motives. He held a festival with the EU right before the election, and one of the main speakers was Mr. Aliyev, who challenged the European Union. And then he brought in Mr. Zelensky to ensure he would make it clear that he wanted to sever relationships with Russia, which cannot arguably be thought to be in the interests of the Armenian people. The one thing Armenians need and want is a multipolar relationship. Yes, improve the relationship with the West, improve the relationship with Turkey, with other countries that are meaningful and necessary, but from a position of strength and not from a position of weakness, from a position where you are preserving the integrity and the symbols and the culture and the history, and where you're not giving up your Declaration of Independence, giving up your church, rewriting your constitution. No one is asking Azerbaijan to rewrite their constitution and take out the Azeri claims over Armenian land. No one is asking the Azeris to do that. And this is fundamental. There is no reciprocity in Azeri demands. We are constantly being met with Armenian surrender without reciprocity and without equality. And this dramatic situation of surrender does inspire one to question Pashinyan's motives, his deals with foreign countries, and what's in it for him, because he certainly does not seem to be motivated by what's in the future for the Armenian people. Now, I'm an American, and the Secretary of State came to Armenia, and I'm not going to attack our Secretary of State, but I am going to say that it is very difficult to watch endorsements of a candidate for president days before an election by a very important official without taking the time to meet with representatives of other political parties. We have written a 140-page document denouncing the EU's interference in the affairs of Armenia. We certainly denounce Russia's threats and Russia's recent demands and the stoppage of agriculture and other products. All of these countries must cease and desist these types of manipulations. But remember always that there will not be a free and fair election in Armenia while we have political hostages, while we have institutions of the state captured by one man, and while the West and the East is silent about the outrageous betrayal of rule of law that continues to go on in Armenia each day. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Amsterdam. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. Really. Я хочу сказать,
I would like to say that whatever we heard from Mr. Amsterdam now comes from a large international legal expert from the United Kingdom. And second, myself and Mr. Amsterdam did a great job working together in January and February when I set up a committee to fight the destruction of the Christian church in Armenia, against everything that Nikol Pashinyan was doing at that time, against the Catholicos and against the summit that was planned to be held in February in St. Belton in Austria. And thanks to our outstanding work, Pashinyan was scared to touch the Catholicos. Well, the summit did take place, and it was a huge victory of ours. And there, Mr. Amsterdam played a very important role by drafting very important letters written in the top legal language, and we sent them out to different organizations. We even sent one to J.D. Vance, who was visiting Yerevan. Mr. Amsterdam was in Yerevan and met Catholicos. So we are making it public today, and we are saying, let him just try falsify the elections, and we'll know what to do. And now I would like to pass the floor to a very important representative, Monsignor Jean-Marie Gervais, head of Observatorio di Pace from Italy. He is present here, and I'm giving him the floor. You're welcome.
Buongiorno, grazie per l'invito. Vediamo la mia relazione sulla situazione degli armeni. Analisi geopolitica, persecuzione religiosa e crisi della Chiesa apostolica armena. L'Armenia tra geopolitica e identità cristiana. L'Armenia occupa una posizione strategica cruciale nel Caucaso meridionale, al confine tra Turchia, Iran, Georgia e Azerbaigian. Pur essendo uno Stato di piccole dimensioni, rappresenta un nodo essenziale tra Europa, Medio Oriente e Asia centrale, soprattutto per i corridoi energetici regionali. Oltre al valore geopolitico, l'Armenia possiede un'importanza spirituale unica. fu il primo Stato al mondo ad adottare ufficialmente il cristianesimo nel 301 d.C., questo elemento religioso costituisce ancora oggi il nucleo dell'identità nazionale armena. I conflitti nel Nagorno-Karabakh. La crisi attuale deriva dal lungo conflitto per il Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh per gli armeni, regione storicamente popolata da armeni ma assegnata all'Azerbaigian in epoca sovietica. Nel 2020 l'Azerbaigian, sostenuto militarmente e tecnologicamente dalla Turchia, ha riconquistato gran parte del territorio. Nel settembre 2023 l'offensiva finale e il blocco dell'enclave hanno provocato l'esodo di oltre 100.000 armeni cristiani verso l'Armenia e una delle più gravi crisi umanitarie recenti nel Caucaso. Molti armeni interpretano gli accordi successivi come una sconfitta strategica che ha lasciato il paese più isolato e vulnerabile. Gli interessi internazionali e l'isolamento attuale armeno. L'Azerbaigian gode di un forte sostegno internazionale grazie alle proprie risorse energetiche fondamentali per l'approvvigionamento europeo dopo la crisi dei rapporti con la Russia. Questo peso economico ha contribuito a limitare le pressioni diplomatiche occidentali contro Baku. Grande importanza assume inoltre il progetto del corridoio di Zangezur che collegherebbe Azerbaigian e Turchia attraversando il sud dell'Armenia. Il progetto coinvolge interessi economici e geopolitici internazionali e viene percepito da molti armeni come una minaccia alla sovranità nazionale. Anche la diplomazia religiosa appare prudente. Vediamo, la Santa Sede ha promosso dialogo e pace senza assumere posizioni particolarmente dure contro l'Azerbaigian, mantenendo al tempo stesso relazioni ufficiali con Baku. Il ruolo storico della Russia. Nella memoria storica armena, la Russia ha spesso rappresentato il principale garante della sopravvivenza nazionale contro le pressioni ottomane e persiane. Molti ambienti ecclesiastici e politici sostengono che l'Occidente non abbia mai fornito un sostegno concreto nei momenti più drammatici della storia armena. Questo legame storico con Mosca è oggi messo in discussione dal progressivo avvicinamento del governo armeno all'Occidente, scelta che ha creato profonde divisioni interne. A ciò si aggiunge la fragilità o le fragilità strutturali dovute anche al devastante terremoto di Spitaka nel 1988 che causò decine di migliaia di vittime e gravi danni economici e sociali. Vediamo adesso la crisi interna e questo scontro con la Chiesa. Negli ultimi anni il governo del primo ministro Nicole Pashinyan è entrato in forte conflitto con la Chiesa apostolica armena, istituzione centrale nella conservazione dell'identità nazionale armena. Diversi esponenti del clero e personalità vicine alla Chiesa sono stati oggetto di procedimenti giudiziari e arresti, accusati di attività destabilizzanti e politiche contro il governo. Tra le figure più note vi sono quindi l'arcivescovo Bagrat, Garstanian e altri esponenti ecclesiastici critici verso le concessioni territoriali all'Azerbaigian. L'attenzione è progressivamente concentrata sul cattolicos Carikin II, guida spirituale della Chiesa armena, accusato pubblicamente dal governo di interferenze politiche. Libertà religiosa e timore di scisma. Secondo molti osservatori, adesso il confronto tra governo e Chiesa rischia di trasformarsi in una crisi istituzionale e religiosa senza precedente nella storia moderna armena. La leadership ecclesiastica denuncia pressione statale sull'autonomia della Chiesa e teme la creazione di una struttura religiosa controllata politicamente. La diaspora armena, molto influente a livello internazionale, segue con forte preoccupazione gli sviluppi della situazione. Il silenzio internazionale. La risposta della comunità internazionale è stata finora limitata. Organismi religiosi e ecumenici hanno espresso preoccupazione, ma senza iniziative incisive. Molti critici evidenziano una forte asimmetria diplomatica, vediamo, Mentre la crisi armena riceve attenzioni limitate, l'Azerbaigian continua a mantenere relazioni privilegiate con numerosi governi occidentali, grazie alla propria importanza energetica e strategica. Le nostre conclusioni, brevemente. La crisi armena non riguarda soltanto un conflitto territoriale, la piccola Armenia, ma investe l'identità nazionale, la libertà religiosa e l'equilibrio geopolitico regionale. L'Armenia si trova oggi stretta tra le pressioni esterne, l'isolamento internazionale e profonde divisioni interne. Il futuro della Chiesa apostolica armena e la tutela dei diritti della popolazione armena rappresentano questioni decisive non solo per il Caucaso, ma anche per il principio universale della libertà religiosa e dell'autodeterminazione dei popoli. È un esempio per noi. Ringrazio.
Grazie mille e tanti auguri, Monsignor. My fantastic Italian language. Спасибо огромное, очень интересно было.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was very interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. И сейчас
And now,
прошу господин Михаил
and now I would like to ask Michael Huppertz, geopolitical expert from Germany.
Венского клуба Александр Рар попросил, чтобы он представил
And Mr. Alexander Ra wanted to introduce this. Over to you, please.
Okay, my microphone is okay? Wonderful. Okay.
Wunderbar.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander Ra, member of the Executive Board on the Eurasia Society, is unfortunately unable to attend your event in person this year. Today's date was set only after he had already committed to an obligation that could not be postponed. He sends you his warmest regards, wishes your symposium every success, and hopes that it will provide important insights and valuable impulse. On his behalf, I would now like to present his thoughts on Armenia, Europe, Russia, and the question of what new geopolitical order may be emerging in the post-Soviet space. The title is Armenia between Europe and Russia, Geopolitical Realignment with an Open Outcome. Geopolitical shifts in the post-Soviet space are accelerating. This is especially visible today in the case of Armenia. Armenia is moving closer to the European Union, politically, economically, and diplomatically. At the same time, the country remains closely connected to Russia, historically, economically, infrastructurally, and in terms of security policy. This is precisely where a new strategic reality is emerging. Armenia is looking for new options. Europe is expanding its influence in the South Caucasus. Russia, however, continues to regard the post-Soviet space as a security-relevant buffer zone. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the European Union has intensified its activities in the South Caucasus and in parts of the post-Soviet region. From a European perspective, this is about stabilization, economic cooperation, and geopolitical influence in a sensitive region. From Moscow's perspective, however, it is seen as a weakening of Russia's traditional sphere of influence. That is why it is essential to distinguish clearly between two different levels: rapprochement with the European Union and a possible NATO perspective. These two issues are often mixed together, but closer relations with the European Union do not automatically mean military integrations into NATO. Several European countries have shown that economic and political integration is possible without NATO membership. Austria is a member of the European Union, but not of NATO. The same is true of Ireland, Finland, or Sweden, where also militarily neutral or non-aligned for decades, while still being deeply integrated into Western economic and political structures. For Armenia, too, a model would theoretically be conceivable that it's based on economic and political rapprochement with Europe, without becoming part of a military alliance structure. But Armenia's situation remains highly complex. The country is located between regional power centers: Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Iran. Its economic, energy-related, and military dependence cannot be dissolved in the short term. For that reason, Armenia is unlikely to completely sever its relations with Russia, despite all current tensions. A real NATO perspective would most likely be interpreted by Moscow as a direct strategic threat. The war in Ukraine has shown that Russia is prepared to escalate massively when questions of military spheres of influence are involved. This is why many observers assume that Armenia will not have a realistic long-term NATO perspective without risking a serious confrontation with Russia. At the same time, Armenia is not a major economic market for Europe. It does not have the economic size or industrial strength of other potential enlargement candidates. Deeper European integration would involve considerable financial, infrastructural, and security policy challenges. This raises an unavoidable question. Would the European Union really be prepared in the long term to fully integrate a comparatively poor and structurally dependent country such as Armenia into its political and economic structures? And what concrete strategic benefit would Europe gain from this? At the same time, the European Union clearly wants to bring Armenia closer to its own political and economic sphere and, step by step, reduce Armenians' dependence on Russia. But so far, Europe has not offered Armenia a fully convincing alternative to its existing Russian security, energy, and infrastructure ties. Political encouragement, economic cooperation, and institutional rapprochement are important, but they do not yet amount to a full strategic replacement. For many countries in the post-Soviet space, Europe is attractive above all as an economic area. It offers investment, trade access, infrastructure programs, visa facilitation, and institutional cooperation. But economic integration into European structures does not automatically mean becoming part of the Western security architecture. The European Union can offer cooperation, markets, and development opportunities, but it cannot guarantee a military protective umbrella based on NATO logic. This is precisely why many states in the post-Soviet space are pursuing a careful balancing policy. They seek economic advantage through closer relations with the European Union, while trying to avoid a full strategic confrontation with Russia. Armenians' reorientation, however, did not arise solely through Western influence. The real turning point was Nagorno-Karabakh. The loss of Nagorno-Karabakh marked a deep political and psychological rupture for many Armenians. Armenia's defeat, the conduct of Russian peacekeepers during the escalation, and the impression that Moscow ultimately failed to provide sufficient protection led to a significant loss of trust in Russia and in the existing security structures of the region. This loss of trust is one of the main reasons why Armenia is now looking more actively for new foreign policy options. From the perspective of the Eurasia society, this is where the real strategic challenge of the coming years lies. Stability in Eurasia will not arise from geopolitical maximum demands. It will require reliable security, economic, and dialogue structures that reduce mutual fears of escalation. Neither the permanent isolation of Russia nor the continued expansion of competing spheres of influence will lead to lasting stability. What is needed instead are new forms of regional cooperation. Cooperation that allows economic integration without automatically producing military threat scenarios. Armenia shows that many countries no longer want to choose simply between East and West. They are looking for models that combine economic openness, political independence, and security policy balance. This requires new diplomatic efforts, confidence-building formats, and economic perspectives beyond pure bloc logic. Infrastructure projects, energy cooperation, trade corridors, scientific exchange, and political dialogue could contribute more to stabilization than further confrontation. A long-term stabilization of the South Caucasus would matter far beyond on the region itself. Every easing of tensions on Europe's geopolitical periphery also reduces the overall strategic pressure between Russia and the West. The Eurasia society, therefore, sees the need to keep spaces for dialogue open, especially in a phase of increasing geopolitical hardening, because lasting stability rarely emerges from complete isolation. It almost always emerges from the ability to maintain political, economic, and social channels of communications, even in times of deep conflict. Thank you in name of Alexander Ra.
Спасибо огромное. Да, это было
Thank you very much. That was a speech of our major partner, Alexander Ra, chairman of the Berlin Eurasian Society from Germany. Right now, I would like to say my important word. Professor, Doctor of Sociology, National Research Institute of Development of the Communication in Russia, Ms. Valentina Komleva, Doctor of Sociology. Hello, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me over. And now I would like to say thanks for being able to join us in Serbia, in Belgrade, and support our event there that was dedicated to cooperation in the Slavic world countries. My topic will consider the choice of Armenian people, European Union or Eurasian Union. And I have so far prepared a few slides for you to make sure that I will back my position up with words and numbers, so that these words are far more convenient to see on slides. Right now, I would like to speak about the choice of Armenian people. Armenian society is very variable, very varied, and there are segments that are oriented at Russia, there are segments that are oriented at the European Union, there are segments oriented at Iran, and so forth. So there are groups, for instance, and other people saying that they have to take a look at China and enter close cooperation with China. But there are other people as well who are actually ready to very rationally interact with Turkey and Azerbaijan, knowing that any geopolitical choice of Armenian authorities will find this response in Armenian society. So the roots to stabilize it with the European Union or establish better relationship with Turkey and Azerbaijan already exist in the Armenian society. But on the other hand, people who are oriented at Russia are far more than those oriented at EU. Yet it's very important to consider social segments. Among young people, there are plenty of those who are oriented at European Union. Knowing that we know that the choice of Armenian people, as far as the segments mentioned, will be identified by three following factors. First of all, the well-being of the people of Armenia. They will actually decide and estimate the benefit each particular project carries for their family, for their near and dear, and for the country itself. The second thing is the actual security factor, and the second factor is the identity and values of the Armenian society that consolidates the Armenian people. Right now, I would like you to skip through the slides quite quickly. So, first of all, I cannot go through the slides myself. So number one, I would like you to go through the slides for me. So the first factor is the well-being. The well-being factor is made of a few things. The next slide, please. First of all, it's trade. We mentioned that already. So the disruption of relationships with the EU will create a few losses. Right now, we estimate that as $5 to $6 billion. That's the estimated loss in mutual trade, which accounts for 23% of Armenia's nominal GDP, or 64% of annual state expenditures. So this loss is a serious shock. Next slide, please. Gas and energy. Right now, we know that we have mentioned that already. If there is a breach of relations of Russia and Armenia, if gas as a result will get more expensive, if gas price will be sold there at European rates, we will see, here at this slide, you will see that potentially the money charged for gas will amount for $1 billion. That's how much more they will be paying. It's approximately 1.5 budgets of Armenia that it spends on healthcare. I'm giving these numbers for comparison. If energy security, and actually the agreements of Armenia and the United States have been mentioned here today already, and it's very difficult to make a diversification, but it's possible to assume that Armenia changes its orientation, but it's not possible to do it overnight. So atomic energy, nuclear energy will be connected to Russia for a long time before new equipment is actually bought and installed. You cannot reinstall the equipment overnight. If Russia all of a sudden drops any cooperation with Armenia, serious problems will arise with maintenance of these facilities. Next slide, please. Labor migration and remittances. Today, the World Bank estimates the remittances to Armenia at 4.9% of the entire Armenia's GDP. There are different numbers stipulated. The actual inflow of non-commercial investments accounts for $4.25 billion. Only for the past 9 months of 2025, it was $2.7 billion. So that accounts for 4.9% of GDP. And if we take a half of those remittances, personal remittances to Armenia, if we take only a half of that, if it halves immediately, we will see a notable decrease of the purchasing power and the level of the well-being of the Armenian society. The ability of Armenian people to work in Russia is eased up of Armenia being a part of the Eurasian Economic Union. It has some advantages. No patents are required, no additional charges are paid for labor allowances. It's just like that, working in your own country if you work in the framework of EU. But if Armenia steps out of EU, they will be losing all of these advantages. And while working in Russia, Armenian people make their personal remittances to Armenia. That's why I mentioned that. On the next slide, we can see agriculture. There are huge risks for regions and alcohol wine production chain, because today Russia acquires 80% of Armenian alcohol. Imagine that. If Russia closes its market for Armenian alcoholic drinks, where are they going to send their wines and cognacs? To France? I doubt that. If Russia closes its market for agricultural produce from Armenia, it will lose approximately 13 to 15% of gross output of the agricultural sector. That's the estimated loss. It's high as that. Imagine Armenia would like to diversify, but would the alternative markets be able to compensate the potential losses? I assume that everything is possible to do. You can make diversification. Most likely the external players will be preparing for that. Armenia will be preparing for diversification, but diversification is not a very fast thing to do. If there is a break in relationship with Russia and EU, there will be a huge economic shock for Armenia. It will be followed by that. It's not possible to very quickly replace the EU market. It's impossible. If they would like to send it to this market after they leave EU, they will have to go through standardization process. It will approximately take 7 to 10 years to do that. They will have to modernize the agricultural industry. They don't have their own money to do so. So what is likely to happen? They are likely to take European credits, and national debt will be going up. And it's not a very good thing for Armenia, potentially. Later we'll be sharing these slides with you, and it shows all of the numbers. But now I want you to show the next slide. Armenia is taking a look at this diversification using Iran and UAE and the Persian Gulf countries. It will be a bit of an alternative for Armenia, but the thing is that Iran can only be an energy-related partner. As far as the product content is concerned, Iran is quite competitive produce-wise. They grow everything there in Iran that Armenia can actually offer. So Iran does not need Armenian products, agricultural products as such. The Persian Gulf countries have very efficient interaction economically with Armenia, but it takes approximately 90 to 95% of exports to the UAE are re-exports of gold and precious stones, mainly of Russian origin. It's temporary. If Russia stops any relations with Armenia, Armenia is no longer going to be a hub for Russian re-export of gold and precious stones with UAE. So the trade with these products with the UAE stops. We have major system dead ends of diversification. The first possible dead end of Armenia is transport isolation in terms of logistics. There is no beneficial logistics for Armenia. If we take a look at this slide, we can see that delivery of one truck with goods from Yerevan to Moscow via Verkhny Laks takes 2 to 4 days and costs about $3,000, yet shipping the same volume of goods to Germany or France overland via Georgia by sea or by ferry to Romania and further to the EU, it takes 14 to 20 days and it costs between $7,000 and $9,000. So we see that there's no benefit there at all. And we can give a lot of other numbers here as well as arguments. Then I should mention change in employment structure. If we take European integration as a possible path, we know that Europeans mostly give Western grants to IT specialists and service sectors. In Armenia, they employ approximately 30,000 of such people, and over than 200 50,000 people are employed in agriculture and the food industry, which are right now tied to the EAEU, and there are no growing perspectives to go elsewhere for them. Seems like in this situation, the Western market will not be able to use their experts. However, the farmers somewhere in Armenia, in the valley of Ararat, they're not going to become IT experts overnight. Seems like it's also a very unlikely kind of diversification. I would like to make a mid-term conclusion. Diversification is possible, but if Armenia would like to get integrated with other countries, they will be doing so. And in midterm, approximately up to 2035, an attempt to very abruptly replace the Eurasian Economic Union with the EU or Iran will lead to a decline of living standards and a budget deficit that Western financial institutions will be only covering through new loans, which will sharply increase Armenia's public debt. The next factor is the security factor. For this, I need a few more slides forward. I'm going to speak about security, Armenia's European path. Right now, I'm showing you three formats that the European Union is offering Armenia. For example, border monitoring rather, resistance to hybrid threats and limited army support. It was announced at the European summit held in Armenia recently. They don't have very direct obligations to the army, but they have a few suggestions to some structural changes. What would be the main conclusion? The integration of Armenia to EU does not guarantee any security to Armenia. Guarantee of security only counts European member states. So Armenia is taking a risk of actually losing any military protection guarantee. So, in case of arising these problems, I will be showing that there will be some issues with that as well. Right here, I would like to show you a few risks. So, first of all, there is a disruption of the actual opportunities of EU and the actual situation. The second thing, what is going to happen is going to happen in a very long time frame. Second of all, it very much depends on the political will. They need Armenia at the moment.
А завтра европейские страны скажут, а нам теперь Армения не нужна.
And tomorrow the European countries will say, we don't need Armenia anymore.
Все. Да. And
the fourth risk is about a regional asymmetry. So Armenia stays a very geographically vulnerable country without access to the sea. So it's a bane of geography, and you can't do anything about that. Next slide, please. Is there security in the Eurasian format? As you can see, what determines security in the Eurasian format? It is ensured by the participation in the CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization. Second, by the Russian military presence in Armenia. And thirdly, the still existing compatibility between certain resources. It's all mentioned in this slide. The key conclusion for security of Armenia is that there are institutions that provide for the security. They're official, they're formal, compared, for instance, to the European formats that have not yet been institutionalized in the military or political order. So there are resources, there's experience, but the biggest drawback is the shortage of trust between the participants in these institutions. That stands in the way. All these tools will only play well if we overcome this trust crisis. The third factor which will affect the choice of the people will be the factor of values and identity. Next slide, please. And the next one as well. For certain criteria, I compared the values and approaches to identity that Armenia has, that Russia has, and that the EU has. The main risk for the Armenian society in a case of European integration is about the diluting of the value-based the values of the Armenian society under the pressure of the universalist approaches of European countries. All previous experience says that the EU promotes universal values through standardization and institutionalizing the relations according to a single blueprint, even in terms of standardizing the educational process under Bologna system, which is also working in Armenia. The key question is whether Armenia, under the pressure of universalism, pressure of the EU, retain its national values. I have big doubts about that, considering what we can already observe in Armenia, and a lot of things happening under the pressure of external players. Now, based on what's happening in Armenia, based on these three factors and arguments, what kind of scenarios can we foresee for the future development? Next slide. And the next one, please. First, the European choice scenario, modernization at the expense of a serious transition shock. I can say that, in general, the Armenian society will be ready for this scenario. It will be ready for this transition, because in the Armenian society, a demand for modernization has matured, and the EU promises this modernization. Of course, promising doesn't mean to do, but the expectations with regard to the EU are related to some changes. People are hoping that Armenia will become more modern, that modernization of the industries will happen, that education will improve, and so on. But the difficulties in implementing these scenarios are related with large losses and shocks of this transition period. Firstly, of economic character, security character, and also value-based character, because we understand how the foundation is important. But Armenians themselves also understand it's important. But it's overshadowed in the first place by their personal prosperity. So economic shocks that Armenia will experience related to the transition to the European path can suspend or stop, put a hurdle in front of this scenario. The next scenario, Eurasian approach. Next slide, please. The main in this scenario will be a crisis of trust between vis-à-vis Russia and CSTO. This scenario removes the economic risks, but it requires restoring the trust and security guarantees between the countries. The next possible scenario is about balancing. Armenia is trying to play this card, balancing Europe and Asia and Eurasia. This scenario is very vulnerable. Firstly, it requires huge diplomatic talent in Armenia as such, and secondly, while the relations are under serious stress between Russia and the West, and not only between Russia and the West, and even Iran and the West, while these relations are under stress, no effective balance can be seen for Armenia. People will constantly feel insecurity about the political choice of their government. So the legitimization of the scenario in the society is fraught with hazards. The fourth possible scenario is an abrupt turn to the West, So imagine the election is over and the political course turns around dramatically to the West. This is a very dramatic scenario. It's fraught with losing markets, losing the identity. But you know, experts believe that if this course is taken, there will be several years of hard life in Armenia, but they won't have this protracted period of uncertainty, and society may adjust faster to different formats of relationship with the West. And there's scenario 5, where the Armenian power will protract, never choosing either of these scenarios, creating kinds of a swamp, sitting on the fence all the time. It will please put scenario 5. It is believed that in this case, a serious internal split will mature in the society. The society, without a single choice or a single option to choose, without an explanation why this choice is not being made, this can bring about destabilization of the country. That can become a source of domestic strife in the country. With this, dear colleagues, I have arrived at the end of my presentation. In conclusion, I would like to underline once again that Armenian society has segments that can legitimize any of these scenarios. The society is split. It's not homogeneous. You shouldn't believe that everybody is focused on the Russian Federation, and I believe that the Russian Federation should also conduct more active and maybe an even tougher policy regarding the course of the acting power in Armenia in order not to offer a serious opportunity for them to prepare to the alternative transition. The more we protract, the more time the existing power will have to move abruptly towards the European Union. Thank you very much. Many thanks, Ms. Konflova. I would like to say that, in my opinion, I know everything about Armenia, but while listening to you, I found a lot of interesting things that follow from your research. And during the discussion, I will share my opinion regarding a couple of these points. There's just one comment I would like to make now. All the opportunities that you presented are quite interesting, But for a person living in the EU who is a president of the Forum of Armenian clubs in Europe, president of the Vienna club, I will assure you that the EU is not prepared to absorb Armenia within the next 10 years. It's all bluffing. You can see what they're doing with Ukraine, with Moldova. All these scenarios are just a matter of speculation. They don't have resources to allow Armenia to join the EU. So the choice will be made on the 7th of June. In 10 days, everything will become clear. And after that, we'll take a look which scenario is going to happen. Thank you very much. You know, I'm sorry, before moving to the discussion, I would like to say, I'm not talking about joining the EU. I believe it will take a lot more than 10 years. What I was talking about is about the choice of the Western political choice and its legitimization. It doesn't necessarily require joining the EU. We also have a country who haven't yet joined the EU, but we see what's been happening there. Georgia, Moldova. Absolutely agree. And now, a very important person, our very famous Armenian in Russia, in Europe, all over the world, politologist, Orientalist, a member of the Vienna Club, PANAP, a very important member, let me note that, Ms. Karine Gevorgyan. And she has quite an interesting title of the presentation. Armenia, EU or EAU? Is there even a choice? Dear Karina, over to you. Hello, dear friends. I thank you for the invitation. And because I'm a politologist, I would like, and economics is not a sphere of my competence, I would like to mention the following. The demise of the Soviet Union is considered as a defeat of the Soviet Union by all Western organizations in the EU and the United States, without any doubt. After that, as we see, the paradigm of globalization started to develop, one of the biggest aspects of which and components of which included de-sovereignization, which in particular we've observed in Europe, where two governance circuits appeared, Brussels and national governments, and we're all aware of the problems related to that. We see the processes that are happening in Europe now that I wouldn't even compare to Europe as it was 10 years ago. Why? Because now the entire world and all the political and economic relations have joined the process of global transformation, which has serious, deep-seated reasons. And it's clear that the processes of competition that are unraveling between large powers, including the competition between the US and the EU, the difficulties in relationships between Brussels and Washington. We can see it without any additional optical tools, how the American powers are supporting different nationally oriented politicians in Europe who are critical about the Brussels bureaucracy. You can't hide that. And all this projects on the post-Soviet environment, and because we're discussing Armenia, it all projects on Armenia as well. Because in this case, we can't ignore that, just like we can't ignore those events that have happened and are happening around Iran related to the Gulf of Persia and the Hormuz Straits, the condition in which the United Arab Emirates are, which will never be able to return to the position that they used to take of a very serious financial hub, for me is quite obvious. So therefore, I believe that Armenia has arrived at this election in a dead-end situation where no agreements, no treaties or intentions can't be implemented completely. So far, the current Armenian powers are assigning different memoranda and agreements now about their relationship with the EU. I absolutely agree with my colleague in that there's no logistics for that. I could close the subject completely because all the logistics of transport, communications depends on Turkey, largely speaking, in the case where Russia and Iran are going to close their lines. And it also includes military logistics, so I absolutely agree. No assistance, with all the pretty words said, can be offered by the European Union if Armenia comes to be attacked. I would take a closer look at how the role of Iran changed in the macro region of the Middle and East and Central Asia. Iran has borders with Armenia. It's interested in the preservation of communications so that Armenia could get access to the Black Sea, to the seas. And I think it's quite a promising area for development. As to the current state of the Eurasian Union, I also believe that it's not stable, and I see the processes that are happening within the Turan project that Turkey is trying to wage in the post-Soviet space, and this project is joined by Azerbaijan, some Central Asian countries, including Kazakhstan, with certain exclusions, Tajikistan and partly Kyrgyzia. Kyrgyzia is also a member of the Turan project, but it is taking a safer position regarding Russia. As to Russia as such, as the largest subject of the Eurasian Union, Russia is also at kind of a crossroads, and its interests are now mostly focused on the Ukrainian military theory, and unfortunately, to my deepest regrets, I regret the Russian leadership is not considering Armenia as one of the points that can provide for Russia's security in the future. Unfortunately, I don't see that. More than that, I see that based on certain political agreements that such a large country as Kazakhstan is making with Russia, but they are much more serious. By the way, it includes Europe, China, and the US, whereas in the Russian mass media, nobody is paying attention to that. just like they're not paying attention at the policies maintained by Azerbaijan, and that includes Ukraine. A little snapshot that I speak about in an open way in Russian TV channels. Vice Prime Minister of the Russian government, responsible for the interaction with Southern Caucasus, Mr. Averchuk, quite recently, paid a visit to Baku, after which, I must say, he made quite a strange statement. He called for the Russian business to invest in Azerbaijan, mentioning a good investment climate. And just after that, Azerbaijan was visited by Zelensky, whom I must say, Ilham Aliyev, president of Azerbaijan, hugged in front of the cameras. After that, they visited the Gabala settlement, and basically by signing the agreement on joint production of military drones in Azerbaijan to provide for the needs of both Azerbaijan and Ukraine, they actually opened this manufacturing facility, which had already been created. At least the foundation for this facility had been created. Nobody paid attention to that in Russia. And as I understand, Russian business people who have heard Mr. Overchuk will be investing in this area as well. And that looks quite strange. This shouldn't have, and it couldn't be ignored in the Armenian society. As to the understanding of the Armenian society of a need to interact with the EU, in my opinion, it boils down to quite a practical approach. And I don't think that any hopes are being pinned of economic character. It is quite sober, and a lot of people are just thinking about the prosperity of their own families. So it looks like they're mostly interested in getting a visa-free regime instituted, being able to travel to the EU, which, you will agree, is itself in a crisis. As a point of clarification regarding those key supplies that Russia is making to the Republic of Armenia, I'm referring to gas. Indeed, President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, cited the correct number, 177, I think, in dollar terms, for 1,000 cubic meters of gas. But this results in gives rise to quite an interesting collision. This is the price at the border, but there's a subsidiary of Gazprom, Gazprom Armenia, the largest taxpayer in the country, and realistically, the domestic price for gas in Armenia is dictated by Gazprom Armenia. So consumers in Armenia are paying up to 450. A real household is paying up to $450 for 1,000 cubic meters. So there's a certain element of insincerity and a certain mismatch, and everybody knows that in Armenia, because gas costs for end users in Armenia are much higher, more than double, 2.5 times higher. It's clear that maybe these energy opportunities can be provided by Iran looking forward, but in this case it's clear that the opportunities for such supplies are not present at the moment. I've just shared about the bad things, if I can express it this way, but I would like to say a few good things. So in spite of the global transformation happening and a situation of strategic uncertainty emerging, the future power in Armenia could declaratively be pro-Russian. But nevertheless, there are opportunities for the North-South project that Iran is very interested and both to Russia, which can be satisfied with just the Caspian Sea and the Azerbaijan territory. Iran is interested in communication via Armenia. And considering that these Iranian ambitions are supported by both Beijing and New Delhi, I believe that they have a chance of developing. Armenia has products that can face demands much farther to the south. I mean a reservoir with fresh water and mineral water that are very valuable, that are now under restrictions in Russia. We know about the Jermuk mineral water, which surprised business people, pro-Russian business people and politicians in Armenia, because those restrictions on the imports of food and mineral water that Russia has instituted. It may well be that they're founded. I'm not talking about that, but that happened just before the election. It actually was a blow to the business and those who are politically and economically oriented towards the Russian Federation. And these people, not being politologists just like myself, they are shrugging their shoulders and believing that the Russian power, especially after Overchuk's visit to Azerbaijan, believe that Russia, in a certain way, is considering Armenia for itself as a certain economic and political ballast. Is it this way or not that way? It's up to discussion, should be discussed, but I wouldn't close my eyes on that, because the restrictions that a Russian consumer supervision body has caused serious concerns, because it was a blow on the business oriented at the Russian Federation. As to the food union industry, yes, today it's a huge blow on agricultural players and on winemaking. But I would like to say that many international experts, including such an American professor as Mearsheimer, have noted that as early as this winter, many countries of the world will face hunger. So whatever relates to food production, it's an important crisis. But nevertheless, considering that 1 year after, not this winter, but the one after it, hunger will become a real factor. And that will mean that opportunities for the European population will also go down. So I don't think that Armenia will have problems finding buyers for its produce. But of course it goes beyond my competence. I would just like to say that the changes that are happening now do not allow us build scenarios based on the algorithms that have been at play recently. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have heard a few words from you that worth an argument. Afterwards, probably I will be adding a few of arguments of mine. But you know, the two-run corridor has been remembered, which is very important. But as far as Russia's authorities' actions are concerned, Well, there are lots of diplomatic steps that's worth a discussion. But now we have our big friend with us, Mr. Guido Giorgio Lombardi, political analyst, advisor to Donald Trump. So let's just listen to Guido Lombardi. Mr. Lombardi, he's been with our conferences and symposia a number of times. Let's just listen to his opinion on main theme: Armenia, its place in the Eurasian Union or the European Union. Over to you.
Thank you. Please. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much for everything that you are doing as Mr. Gregorian. I personally, not just like I love Armenia, but I just wanted to let you know, especially in these very difficult times, even today, probably you heard that most likely President Trump will reject the request that Iran had as a precondition to further talks to release $24 billion that they were seized by the Gulf states, you know, both Emirates as well as Qatar, of funds that they had in those banks. By the way, most of those $24 billion were in Gulf state banks. They were not state funds. They were stolen from the government of Iran, but all of those 24 billions, they actually were in private hands, either the leaders, some of them, they're no more, or the relatives of those leaders of the regime in Iran. So the Gulf states, rightfully, they seize it because there's a lot of damage, and we have to repay, especially Qatar, you know, the refinery and everything that was the damages done by the drones and the missiles that the regime in Iran threw at their brothers in the Gulf states. So I don't think that those $24 billion are going to be returned. So I don't think that there will be a deal like Mr. Trump says, like President Trump says. Having said that, Mr. Trump has been trying for a long time to create the conditions to avoid any war, any death on either side. But like he said, again, for the last 10 years, we cannot allow the regime of Iran to have nuclear weapons. And the excuse that they have that they wanted nuclear energy, but when everybody knows, and they have been telling the whole world that they had 60% enriched uranium, that is not for a nuclear plant, it's for a nuclear bomb. And they were, before we bombed them, they were ready to produce about 6 or maybe even 10 nuclear bombs. Now they're trying to dig out whatever is left from the deposits that they had. And again, Mr. Trump says, you cannot have a nuclear bomb. So either you give us the enriched uranium that is still, in your hands or somehow under piles of rubble, or we have to come there and take it. And if you don't like it, then, well, we're going to have to take it with force. So unfortunately, as I say again, not the president and not the people of the United States want a war in that region. But we are forced by the hard line of the regime in Iran. Having said that, I have to tell you on a personal level, President Trump is definitely a devout Christian, very good friend, of course, with Israel and all of the Jewish people everywhere. And we know very well the history of Armenia and the persecution that have been going on for 20 centuries last, and not even the century before, but from the very beginning. Christians, Armenians, they have been persecuted for centuries, and we are absolutely grateful to the strength and fortitude and faith that the Armenian people have demonstrated all throughout history, but especially now. So even though, even the Prime Minister of Italy went to visit, but then after went to visit to Azerbaijan as well, we understand the differences. And right now, especially for the Europeans, there is a search for energy supplies, and that creates a little bit of a problem on the European side. The Europeans they do not quite understand the importance of Armenia. And but as far as the United States, we do. They are our ally, not only politically, but as I said, on a much deeper level, which is a spiritual, religious, social, and a level of tradition and values. And this goes beyond any interest of, oil or gas or whatever, energy, whatever it is. So as far as President Trump is concerned, any friendship with the Armenian people goes well beyond anything else that could be, offered in terms of economy, finance, or whatever. I only pray we can continue this friendship. I am absolutely great invitation, and I will do my absolute best to always bring up the best of the Armenian tradition and values. Of course, the Armenian Church as well, both here in Italy, where sometimes I have some success, and definitely in the United States. I really send you my best, and tell you I will do my best for Armenia and Armenian people.
Thank you very, very, very much, Mr. Lombardi. It was a really
Thank you very much,
pleasure. Your opinion about Armenia and Armenians in the world, it's really, really, for me, very, it's really very, very have big value. And I am absolutely agree with you. What about Armenia? I want only give you one question. What about Iran?
Yes.
Of course, we are all together against that Iran make nuclear bomb. Yeah, absolutely. We all are with you. But I have a question. When we are against Iran, what about in this problem with nuclear bomb? Why we don't speak about Israel? Why Israel must have a full possibility make nuclear bomb? And why USA and Mr. Trump are with Israel so close, and so hard against in our neighbor Iran? Why? Can you answer me this question, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there is a situation that, especially from the point of view of the United States and, of course, also Israel, is that the regime in Iran for the last 30, 40 years have been the sponsor of terrorism. Every single act of terrorism, against civilians, which is the worst, against civilians, has been perpetrated either by Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran itself, Revolutionary Guards, or other organizations directly tied to Iran. The major problem beside the nuclear weapons is the fact that the immense economic power, or the very important economic power that Iran had until now, due to his export of oil, gave it the possibility to finance not only with weapons, but also with money, this activity all over the world. Certainly in Gaza, in Lebanon, as I say, Hamas, Hezbollah, but many other organizations all over the world. So that is a problem that is a common problem for both the United States, Israel, but also many European countries. As far as the bigger picture, as you know, President Trump went recently to visit President Xi of China. During those talks, he brought many of the big tech American to China to basically try to organize an economic pact between the United States and China. But not only an economic pact on one side, but also let's say, an opening of oil transport from Iran to China, not only right now, but also in the future. So basically, the accord in few words is, okay, we will provide you, China, with technologies that you need, the chips, the this, that, and we also will provide you with safe access for your ships on the Strait of Hormuz. They have already, I think, like about 20 ships. They're already passing right now as we speak. They're already passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And most of those ships are Indian and Chinese. Probably is oil that the Chinese already paid. So they want their oil, and they want especially their oil tankers. They want their ships back in a safe area. So the Iranians, they let them pass, but there were a few, crazy people, especially down in the south, that they don't respect anymore the commands of the president of Iran, of the so-called moderates. And so they sent some boats. They tried to mine the strait, and we had to take them out with the support and the agreement even from their ally, China. The Soviet Union, it's a completely different story. They are just happy to be able to sell their oil to China. Right now, they're starting to sell again. They pretend not to European countries, oil and gas. And as far as the situation in Ukraine and Russia, I really don't know. I don't think anybody knows what is going to happen. They are two very stubborn people. And we tried, President Trump tried, everybody saw him trying and trying and trying. But those two, it's just a battle of wills, and it's very difficult to make them see peace. So I don't know what's going to happen over there. But as far as Iran, I'm afraid that we will have to go there again. I wish I could give you better news, but I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Я отвечу очень коротко на русском.
I will be giving you a very brief response in Russian. As far as Israel, unfortunately, I have not been given an answer from you why Israel is allowed to have nuclear bombs and other countries are not allowed. You didn't answer that question, but let's leave it aside for now. As far as this final comments of yours, as far as the clashes of two people, the conflict of two people, stubborn people, I would say one of those people you mentioned is the president of the big country, Mr. Putin, an experienced diplomat. On the other side, we have a clown, an absolute clown. And he became president just by doing completely different things and saying absolutely different things before. And he had come to power by promising absolutely different things than what he does now. He was a stand-up comedian back in the day, without any diplomatic preparation. Just like Mr. Pashinyan in Armenia. He is a bad version of Pashinyan. He had brought his country to a disastrous war. I remember in Poroshenko times, they had started bombarding and bombing Lugansk, and they claimed that it was their Ukrainian territory. It was their territory. Why did you drop bombs on people there? So the next question, which will be arisen at our symposium, Mr. Lombardi, I do love you and respect you, Mr. Lombardi, but I promise you that one of the future symposia will be dedicated to this particular topic that I have announced right now, where we will invite you and we'll be listening to your opinion and we'll be on the different sides of the barricade. But as far as Armenia is concerned, thanks very much for joining us here and supporting us Armenians. There is a big colony of Armenians living in America, in Los Angeles. We call them Los Armenians. And we are deeply interested in establishing good relationships via you with Mr. Donald Trump. Thanks very much for joining us here, Mr. Lombardi. Well, unfortunately, we are lagging behind, but we do need a coffee break. Do we actually need a 10-minute long coffee break? Yes. Thank you.